Well, hello. Guess what I've got in store for you? Another Barefoot Brawling episode. Yes! Now, back over the winter, I got invited to go down to Florida, which is amazing. If you all haven't been there, I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic land of wild adventures and crazy, insane, terrifying dinosaurs. Seriously, there's dinosaurs in Florida. Anyways, I got invited to go down there to speak at a church. Shocking. No, for real. First time I've really ever been invited to a church to speak since I started talking about things like machetes and tomatoes and linen, sapphires, and obviously milling. So I made those bunch of folks Millenites. If you haven't seen episode 1, it was actually episode 3, but you don't know that yet, so it's okay. But it was called Barefoot Brawling. Preach and teach! It was fantastic and an adventurous time in my life. And I was so thankful to get an opportunity to do that, and they invited me back for more. So I'm going to try to release these guys to you bit by bit as I'm able to. But it's going to jump right in here. And this episode is all about treasure hunting. So I hope you are most ready and that you have some kind of device ready to hunt for treasure. If you don't, they're called your feet. And you can take your shoes off anytime and change your life legitimately. Did you know, real quick, if you just walk barefoot in wet grass for 30 minutes, it can physically heal you. So much so that the pharmaceutical companies out there, you know, the ones that are all about murdering humans, they would never, ever want their humans in bare feet. You know why? Because they invented the tennis shoe. Seriously, it's a giant grand conspiracy someday I'll have to get into. That the pharmaceutical industry made friends with the running shoe industry to ruin your soul and destroy your body. Anyways, that's not what this talks about. But I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to swing a machete on stage tonight. So let's jump in, shall we? Live dangerously, as you know. By the way, read the book of Esther. If you haven't, I'll probably read it to you because it's so astoundingly, wonderfully gratifying about all of the evil schemes that other people are up to that suddenly get dumped right back on their own head. That's called mishpat. That's justice. Sweet Moses of the Nile, it is justice like you've never seen. If you don't know about Mordecai and the amazing story of Esther, I encourage you. It would behoove you. Read it. Anyways, I hope you live dangerously every single day of your life because the days are evil, but you, oh mighty one, were born for such a time as this. I love you. Talk to you soon.
Then why is it that death permeates our culture? I was addicted to death. I was just sharing over here with them that my life, I had believed this lie. I believed I was wired backwards. That my family utilized radical intelligent evil to wire me backwards, to discern and ascertain the giftings that I had, the natural curiosity, the inquisitiveness, the hunger for small, tiny things to bring me great satisfaction and joy that I found predominantly in His creation. That I had this insatiable need to uncover treasures. Like, I know some of you guys have seen your kids out there digging in the dirt, and when they find you like a cool rock, and they're like, look at this treasure I found. Let me show you one of mine. Look at this cool treasure I found. And you're like, yay, it's a brown rock. And they're like, it's amazing, right? And you're like, it's a brown rock. But outside, you're like, oh, wow, good job. That's so beautiful. And they're like, I want to put it on the door right there. And you're like, you know, we don't have really room for that, you know, with the 400 other rocks that are already up there. So, you know, it's hard for us, I think, as adults to get the mind of a child. I know that was the case for me because I just wanted people to get that I thought these things that I was finding outside were far more exciting and unique than anything I was finding inside. And I was going to churches, I was going to house fellowships and traveling all over with my family to different little homes. And I was always watching what was happening in these houses. But the reality was I was always curious about what was going on outside. I wanted to know what was happening outside. And yet I was raised in a culture that locked me indoors, that shoved me in a school that made me sit at a desk and said, don't move. And I thought that was prison. I hated it. I thought it was punishment every time they told me to go inside. I hated that feeling. And I thought that was the way that we controlled people, was to take the things they love and to take them away from them and make sure they could never find them again. That's what I believed. I believed that the good things in this world were made to be locked up and kept away from you. And if you really wanted to get them, you had to fight and kick and destroy everything around you till you could get a hold of it. I believed that in my life. And so I got seduced by death. I got seduced by this idea that I could get out of this mess that I was in, where there was constant abuse, where there was constant manipulation, where there was coercion. And I'm not just talking about my parents and the nightmare of what was happening. I'm talking about my teachers. I'm talking about the systems of education, the systems of indoctrination that I was forced to sit down in front of, that my parents would send me away to school and say, I know, that's not what the Bible says, but you have to memorize the lie if you want to pass the test. And that really bothered me. It's some part of my being that was wiring me backwards. That was making me have to learn that you're supposed to play along to get along in our society. And you know what that did to me? It killed me. It killed me. And I believe this is something that's happening to people all over the world every single day. And it's what's being systemically indoctrinated into us at a very little age. We do that because the enemy is a strategist. The enemy is a master tactician, a legal accuser who has used beguiling wits. It's said the first time we enter in this character in the story that the serpent, Revelation 12:10 later tells us this is the serpent, the dragon, the devil of old. He beguiled Eve because he was craftier than every other beast of the field, which tells me that the beasts of the field have craftiness in them. And most of us are so disconnected and so distant from us, and animals are locked up over there that we can't even see the craftiness of other animals, let alone the craftiness of a serpent. I've gotten to see the craftiness of serpents now because I'm outside again. But most of us, I literally tell people, come down to Florida. And they're like, there's water moccasins in all the water, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's great. Get in the water. No thanks. There's giant dinosaurs called alligators there too. There's 2 million of them. This is the statistics. There's 2 million alligators in Florida. 2 million. That's enough for most humans to get bit regularly, right? Wouldn't you think that everybody in Florida is getting bit by alligators constantly? Y'all like to swim occasionally. I've seen some of you guys in the water from time to time. If you're not fishing, or sometimes you guys, I've seen it. You go in the water, there's beaches and everything. But nobody's getting attacked maliciously by alligators. See, because the alligator doesn't want to eat your soul. It's not like that. Most of these creatures that are out there aren't devouring the human flesh like crazy. But we've been brainwashed to believe they're scary, they're dangerous, and they're beasts. We should avoid them. See, but every beast of the field in James, it says that every beast of the field, every creature in the sea has been made to be subjected by man. That every one of them, at some point in there, man has figured out a way to domesticate them. Meaning the water moccasin dude. And we can find this today. We're like, yeah, there's this guy on YouTube. Crazy. He's milking snakes that'll kill you dead. And he's like hanging out with them like pets. But it says in the Bible that every animal of the field, every single one that's ever existed, man has had dominion over it. From the garden and even in modernity. So yet we still believe this lie that, animals bring death. They're scary. Avoid them. Put them over there. But I've come to learn throughout my life that if you actually look things in the eye and see it with your own eyes, not black mirrors, like the black mirror most of us see the world through, that's not reality. That's a version of it. When you look at a mirror, what does the mirror do that's different than every other surface that we look at? The mirror shows you a reflection you think is true, that looks exactly accurate, but when I hold up my right hand to the mirror, what waves at me? Left hand. So everybody knows that every mirror you've ever looked at was telling you lies. Every single mirror you ever looked at told you a lie. So we stare at black mirrors for endless hours, looking for truth, looking for understanding, believing these lies. Now our children are forced to sit in a room where they stare at black mirrors perpetually, cut off from the rest of the real world, unable to see things with their eyes. I have a whole series on my channel called Nature Nate, where I just get in the water and try to look all these creatures in the eye. I have just like an innate need to see things with my own eyes. And I've looked at alligators in the eye. I've got out of kayaks and swam over to them with these. Because I'm not made for that kind of water. It's rough, it's intense, and it burns my eyes because there's so much glyphosate in it. It hurts around Plant City. Sorry guys, it's true. Your water burns. It's bad. But I wore these, and I was able to look an alligator in the face. I got as close as me and you, and that alligator stared me right back. And you know what he didn't do when he ran up out of the water? Attack me. But everybody I tell this story to, they literally start backing up. They're like, oh yeah, that's great. I'd never do that. That's crazy. Why would you ever want to do that? Because I'm innately curious, and so are you. And anybody who is missing that, it's because death has entered into some area in your soul that needs to be rooted out. I'm not just talking about creation. I'm talking about the Creator. Do you understand? Because he says that he revealed his nature to us so that all men would be without an excuse in his creation. But most of us don't believe the Creator's story is true because most of us don't know anything about his creation. Like one of the farmers, I was staying at his farm, he told me, if you're ever going to have a conversation with somebody where you're wrestling with whether or not there is a true Creator, like somebody who wants to hold a position of agnosticism or atheism, if you ever want to have that discussion, he said, always do it outside. He said, even better, do it under a big tree. And why? Most of us don't even know how to look and observe things that are going on in creation around us to tell the testimony that that tree is proclaiming day and night. Like when we see the big oak tree, where people are like, wow, that's a cool oak. I drove by a sign out here that was in one of these little tiny unnameable towns, but it said the mulberry tree. It had a big plaque for this one tree because for 100 years people have been eating fruit of that tree. Like little grandkids, big, tall dads, great-great-great-granddads, all eating fruit from that tree for 100 years. So we put a sign there to tell people about it. But they didn't put the sign there telling people about the Creator who made the tree, right? We call that idolatry, where I come from. That's worshiping the Creator, not the Creator. But we don't think America's plagued by idolatry in the same way. But we got plaques like this all over. And everywhere I go, because I travel full-time in an RV, I get to see the idolatry that men have taken and made a carved image to worship something that says a testimony about who he is. This is a good thing. I love the alligators. I think they're incredible. It's like staring at a real dinosaur. Like a real dinosaur is staring at you in this perfect skin suit, and you can look them in the eye. There's like less than a dozen people getting mauled by alligators every year in Florida. Like, what? More people got hit by coconuts this year. Legitimately. Like, you all walked under some coconut trees? Those are big things, man. Those are intimidating things. And they could, at any given moment, crush your face. Nobody's scared of the coconut tree anywhere else in the country. Why is that? Good marketing. Good marketing. See, the poor alligator gets the bad marketing, but the coconuts, we should be dreading. We should be dreading the coconuts. But nobody does. They just think about them as deliciousness. Coconut water comes out of them. No, coconut water is not what you think it is. It is a murderer of mankind, and it should be... No, I'm just kidding. So I just want you guys to take a second and consider the other areas that may be in your life where idolatry has crept in, where you have not given credit to the Creator, but instead we have begun to look at the plaque that talked about him. Because if you guys only come here once a week, or if anybody else goes there on YouTube or to a podcast and they listen to somebody else's message or they listen to somebody else's thoughts or ideas on the Word, you're coming for a vitamin. You're coming for a second pressing of oil, okay? The priests in these scriptures, they were commanded to take this first pressing of the olive oil. Like when you pluck an olive, okay, real quick, olive oil comes from olives predominantly. It comes from other stuff too, like the black tar out of the earth, but olive oil comes out of olives. And when you pluck an olive off of a tree, it releases one drop voluntarily. Every other drop that you want to get out of an olive, you got to crush that thing. But that one drop, they would collect that. That one drop off of every olive, collect it, collect it, collect it. And with those single drops, they would accumulate one voluntary container of olive oil that was given freely. That was an oil that was used, that was the choicest, kadosh, set-apart oil that they could use in the lamps. That is a unique and set-apart aspect of creation that you cannot comprehend if you think olive oil comes from a jar, a plastic bottle at the store. But if you've never looked at an olive tree and taken an olive with your fingers and plucked it, you can never look at this and observe it. Like manual labor jobs in farming, which I do by the sweat of my face now, I do these tasks thousands of times. Like these are how I work all day long. All day long. Tens of thousands of times I do this. And you know what it starts to do? If you don't just black out and listen to stuff on your headphones all day long, you have to look at what you're doing. And you have to start trying to think of other lessons that are coming out of this experience other than I planted 4,000 onions. I just don't want to touch an onion again for a long time. But there's something about me planting the 4001th onion that taught me the lesson. Like when I'm pruning a vine, I'm a vine dresser. All day long I prune vines. I have to prune off shoots and suckers to control this vine to grow one way. Otherwise, vines grow crazy. They go all over the place. You all been to Florida, right? You've seen some vines in your days. You guys are like wrestling them things. I've seen you guys. You don't like your vines because they're thorny and they're nightmares. But if you prune a vine, you can control it and you can make it grow in a direction you want. And that is what I do with tomatoes. I make them grow in the direction they want to bear the fruit that I want them to bear and nothing else. I refuse to allow them to bear any fruit that I don't choose. And so when I come along, I literally will even prune the trusses of tomato flowers. So when they put out flowers, they might put out 7 flowers. And you know what I do? As soon as I see that 1 and 2 tomatoes have popped out and are fruiting on there, I cut all the rest of the flowers off. I refuse to allow them the opportunity to bear any more fruit out of that trust. And that's because I'm a good vine dresser. I'm a good vine dresser. I want them to bear 2 healthy, consistent, beautiful tomatoes and nothing else. Because if I leave them and they bear 3, I'm going to get a runt. If I let them bear 4, I'm going to get 2 weird raisin-like shapes coming out of them. If I let them bear 5, 6, 7, 8, I have some tomatoes that'll put out 25 flowers. And not one of them will be worth bearing fruit all the way. The seeds that are contained therein will not be as strong. They will not be able to reproduce as readily in the same way because I failed to maintain that vine. So this is something I have to do over and over and over again. And you start to do this time and time again, you suddenly start to realize there's lessons in this that I need to learn about why the Father sometimes is walking along in our life and we think we're finally starting to bear some fruit in an area and we're gaining some ground and we think we finally have learned a lesson that he's wanting us to learn and then he cuts us off. And all of the things that we thought were giving confirmation, the doors were opening, the doors were opening, the doors were opening, and then they slam in your face, and they slam in your face, and you're getting dejected, and you're getting ruined, and you're losing your house, and your family, and your friends, and everything is going evaporated in your life. And you're like, what just happened? Sometimes the vine dresser is pruning you down to just bear the only fruit he wants you to bear in your life. He will do that to you gently and lovingly, and other times he will do that roughly. Because sometimes we can be a stiff-necked people. Some of the vines that I work with hundreds of different varieties of vines over these years. And I've got to learn that some of my vines, I can work very hard. I can literally grab them like a rope and just wrap them around. But other vines, even if I just barely touch them, they will break. They are so delicate that I have to slow down and be so intentional. Otherwise, I'll destroy them. And the Father knows each and every one of you. The Father knows you. If you've been a parent and you have children, you've even seen this in your own children, how differently you have to handle each and every one of them. And once you do so, though, you allow them and you enable them to bear better fruit in their life. And this is what the Father has for us. This is what the Father desires for us. He is a good vine dresser. Everybody knows this little story that Yeshua says when he's like, I am the vine. Stay in me, and I'll stay in the Father. But if you've never worked with plants, none of this really makes any sense to you. Like the Father, if you want to grow plants, sometimes you want to pick a variety that's fruit tastes really good, like of an apple tree. You want the Fuji apple. All the Fuji apples you guys have ever eaten in your life, they don't grow on Fuji roots. They have a completely different root system from a totally different tree. That's not a Fuji. Not even close. They grow them on these dwarf trees. These trees that'll stay really, really short and put out all their fruit and stay short. Because that's conducive if you have an enclosed space. A lot of these, they'll grow them indoors. They'll grow them in boxes or cubes, and they'll do aquaponics, hydroponics. They'll do all these different systems of growing in different climates as you go more northern latitudes, where you couldn't grow apples, but they can if they take these things and they graft them. They take one variety of this apple tree, and they put it on the patron, the father, of a different root. And when they do that, they can bear the good tasting fruit from this variety on a rootstock or a father of a plant that nobody wants to eat those apples. This is how food is grown in our society today. That would be the natural method when you hear him talking about being grafted in. When you hear him saying these things, you literally cut off the old. You literally cut it off and you splice in the new. But this is what I learned today because I was talking to a gal who's a master grafter. That's all she does. Tens of thousands of times she just grafts stuff. And I was like, what are some of the lessons the Father's taught you grafting? She's like, oh, that's a great question. So nobody's asked me that. I'm like, well, how does nobody ask you that? You're a grafter. Because nobody knows what grafters are. Grafters She said, the one thing she said I could think about, she said, even after you graft it, got a good plant, trees growing up nice and good. She said, the patron, the father, the original root, starts sending up more of the old stuff. It keeps coming out and budding and budding. She said, if you leave that thing, because you're like, hey, I grafted it, I'm gone. If you come back to that, the old one will have outgrown the new tree that you planted on there, and it'll take it over and kill it off. Because it's the original. Does this sound like your sin nature ever? Does this sound like anybody else's flesh talking? Does this ever sound like how our lives go, where we think we've been grafted in, right? We're good. We don't have to do anything else. I believe, and I'm saved, but my life's a nightmare and a train wreck the rest of my life, and I guess I get to go to heaven when I die, so hooray. Like, that was the Christian gospel I got most of my life. And that was the fruit I saw in the Christian schools I was raised in. I saw the same statistics for divorce and abuse and systemic radical evil infecting the lives of everyone around me, but I didn't see the same fruit of the kingdom like I read about in the scripture. Like, I wanted to see the fruit of the book of Acts when I looked around. But instead, I saw the book of Judges all around me, where every man did what was right in his own eyes. There was no king over Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. That was the kingdom I saw. That's still the kingdom I look out there today, but we see these tiny pockets of good fruit out there. What makes that different? What makes them different and set apart? These are the people that have taken the word and valued it as a precious thing, as a treasure beyond measure. And they've come to this word and they've treated it like it was the most valuable thing in their life. And they receive from their Father the true root that we need to be grafted into. They receive the most precious oil we could ever receive in our life. And that oil can be taken and used to set up a light to the nations. That is what we were made to be. I was made to see these lights burning in the distance, this dark abyss of my life. I needed to see that there was hope. And you guys have an opportunity to be that hope in the light of darkness that is taking on all over the world. The enemy is seeking to extinguish the hope of mankind in 1 year's time. In 1 year's time. How radically intelligent and strategic of our enemy to turn this world inside out. But you know what it's caused? It's sifted the world. It's sifting the nations with vanity. It says here in the scriptures that the Father uses the sift of vanity to sift us. You know what vanity comes from? The most vain thing in the world, right? Staring at a mirror. Why is that the iconic idea of vanity? The person who regards themselves. We stare at a mirror all the time. You're so vain. I bet you think the song is about you. Yeah, we do. We all do. It's inherent in us. Like, it's inescapable. We want to look at the mirror. So did Eve. Eve wanted to look at the tasty, good-looking fruit, not regarding the fact that it was death screaming and talking to her. But it was a fiery, shining serpent. It wasn't some kind of little snake. It wasn't a water moccasin that talked to Eve, guys. Like, they've seen some pretty cool animals at this point. Don't forget it. They're like the gardeners of the earth. They've seen the coolest stuff ever. Do you think a water moccasin that talks is going to beguile a woman? The mother of all of the earth? No. Beautiful, radiant, glorious, transformer of angel of light, masquerading in front of their face, beguiling her with the eyes. Women have a susceptibility to be beguiled through their eyes. And because of that, vanity was conceived. It said death was conceived in the garden, but vanity came with it. And vanity is a sieve that will sift the nations. But do you know what also happens in the tabernacle when Israel got brought into the wilderness, when they left Pharaoh and they ran for their lives because his army was chasing them, and their Father in heaven delivered them and sent an angel of fire by night to guide them and a cloud by day to shelter them from the heat. When he delivered them, the women came forward when they were building the tabernacle and they laid down the mirrors of Egypt. They offered the mirrors of Egypt. I'll just read it because most people, it's a freaky, weird verse that they don't ever think about. But this one kicked me in the teeth when my wife and I were having a big discussion on vanity. She just did a video that was called Removing the Mask of Vanity, Why I No Longer Wear Makeup. And it ticked a lot of people off. but her testimony was brutal, and the Father broke us of this. But if we would voluntarily give these mirrors, like he did for us and he calls us to, they took their mirrors that the women that were ministering in the tabernacle, they took their mirrors from Egypt. They were these copper mirrors that they would polish very highly so they could look at themselves and paint their eyes with mascara. This is where this practice comes from. Egypt, the house of bondage. That's literally the word Mitzrayim, a house of misery. They took those mirrors and they melted them down. They melted them down, and with that molten copper, they cast a great bronze bowl, a fountain, where the water, it was called basically this place that you would wash your hands and your feet if you were a priest after doing the bloody animal sacrifice. You get all bloody after offering your sacrifice to get closer in your relationship with the Father. You would wash yourself in this water. Wash yourself in the water of the Word before you could come into the more set-apart place where the light from that oil would be burning in the menorah. You needed all of these ingredients in your life to go through a lesson, to go through an experience so that you could enter in to have that true one-on-one relationship with the Father. He has this waiting for us if we would lay down these things that have become our idols and we would murder them. Last time I was here, for those of you that weren't here, we read from Judges chapter 6, and we learned about this guy named Gideon. Gideon is like a super popular Bible character story in the kids' Bible books. People are like, Gideon always gets the press. They're like, yes, he had this fear, but then he conquered it. And with only 300 guys, he took out an army of 160,000. I've looked through a lot of kids' Bible books recently trying to teach my children, and some of them always have the same characters that show up. And there's like the unnamed judges that just get skipped over. And then there's whole books that get skipped over. And then you're suddenly like, why is everyone talking about Gideon? The first thing Gideon does that's always left out of all the kids' Bible stories is he tears down his father's idols. His father had erected the altars of Baal. His father had erected the pillars of Ashtaroth. His father had been leading the kingdom of that area into idolatry. But Gideon obeyed the voice of his Father in heaven and tore that stuff down. And from that, he received a fresh anointing from the Father of the heavens and the earth to go forth and do mighty deeds. Every one of you has an opportunity every single day that you will give it a value to turn to the kingdom of life and to turn your back on those black mirrors and the false sense of security that they might provide you and see the Creator with your own eyes and to go look out at creation and marvel at the wonders that He's put in the sky every night. He is still there. He is always there. The sun and the moon will not go away. Every day they are a reminder of you. His covenant stands forever. When you see the rainbow, remember these words. There's these stories that are in here that require us to go and look at creation if we want to learn them. I hated farming. I hated the idea of being outside and sweating. I thought that would be horrible because I was sitting in the classroom watching all the people tell me, basically, this is the system you want. You want the American dream, son. Don't you want it? You want the nice school education? You get a good job, you get the white picket fence, you get the house and the wife with 2.5 children and a dog. It's yours for the taking. This is what I was sold. There's obviously not as good marketing campaigns these days because it involves massive terror and nightmares and pandemics and plagues. And they're not as good at marketing this to our children, but instead they've just got them staring at black screens with Netflix Unlimited to binge their life away. I believed that lie. I believed that lie, that I wanted to sit in a climate-controlled environment the rest of my life. I didn't want to go out there and sweat. When I would see people doing construction on the side of the road, I'd be like, man, I don't want to be that guy. Ooh, he looks so hot. He looks so hot. But then the Father began this change in me. And I started looking at these things. This is a machete. It doesn't look like a super awesome machete. Last time I went on stage and preached, I brought a different kind of machete. Makes people nervous when you put a machete on stage. Trust me. This is what should make people nervous when you walk on a stage. But this is a machete. Different kind of blade, right, than my little pruners. This I finally got given to me. After pruning 200,000 tomatoes, I wanted this my whole life. But I've been believing the lie that if I wanted to go be in construction, I'd have to stand on the side of a road in a city the rest of my life and just be sweaty and miserable. But then the Father finally gave me the opportunity to learn construction from a primitive engineer. What does that even mean? Guy builds houses in the jungle, like real, for real. That's who gave me this machete. He's a master builder who builds primitive structures out of whatever he finds. Ran for his life when he was 7 years old, fleeing a government that was recruiting, that's a super nice way of saying it, children into the army. And the way they would do that is they would plunder your village. They would raid your house, take all of your food, steal all the boys, and they would move on to the next village. So when his dad heard this was coming, he took his family and smuggled them into another country. That means he lied, guys, to get past a checkpoint. Consider it. He lied, shoved his kids, buried them under the car so that he could get his family into another country because he heard rumor that some horrible things were coming his way and maybe we should get out of town now. Well, when he got to this other country and he tried to find a place to stay, he was rejected there. They had to go live in the jungle. How many of us, if tomorrow we had to choose, these people are going to come and take my children, they're going to come do things to my children and make my children learn things that I don't want them to learn, lies, poison them. Am I willing to go and run to the jungle? Like for real, I'm not talking hypotheticals, you guys. Like if you stopped having electricity as an option for the rest of your life, would you be okay with living down here through the summer? Yeah, this is like the nervous chuckle, like, no. You seen mosquitoes? Go. There's mosquitoes, you guys. If they stopped spraying, you'd just be drowning in clouds of them. I've read books from the natives down here. These people didn't live down here all the year long. Do you understand that? There's a reason. Migrating is a good choice. It's a great concept. Go north when the animals do. They know things you don't. That man and his dad, that man, by the way, 7-year-old boy, went into the jungle with this actual machete when he was 7 years old. And you know what his dad did? Built them a house. You know what that boy did? Got a machete from his dad and learned how to build a house. How many of our 7-year-olds are ever going to be, is there anyone in here that's 7? 7. How many are comfortable if I give this kid this machete right now? I believe this kid could handle this machete if his dad taught him how to handle this machete, right? That's the rule in the house, right? Dads are going to give their son a pocket knife when he's like been watching him. You ready to give your son a machete? Not yet, right? I got a 4-year-old. She doesn't get this. Nuh-uh. She got scissors, though, and she's super good with them. So we're cool. We're working on it, right? But at 7 years old, his dad gave him a machete and said, co-labor with me. We're going to build a place for our family to live. That's amazing, right? That man has been building houses for the homeless, the orphans, the fatherless, the widows, the outcasts, and the deserters of the societies of the world all over the world. All over the world. That's all he does. That's all he does. He builds houses. He builds a lot of greenhouses because that's what he does now too. But he built houses for people everywhere. I find he doesn't speak very good English. Okay, he didn't come over to the country until just a few years ago. So his English, and I don't get to hear a lot of like his story. Do you know what I mean? I don't get to know like what he did. And then I meet somebody that's known him for 20 years. And then I hear his story. And then I sit there and I want to just shut my mouth at thinking that I know anything in this world. Because we have been taken captive by the devil to do his desire because we don't know what people's stories are. We don't know what people have been through. We don't know what they're going through. We don't know anything about them because we keep staring at these dang mirrors all the time. Do you know anything about your neighbors? Do you know anything about them? The person, the human being, the created special one. Do you even know how to look them in the eye? Can you even look people in the eye? Can they see your face? They need us. They need us. And they need people who will pick this up and tell them how precious it is. Tell them about the one who saves. His word is not far off. It's not something that we can't go up and get with great labor and intensity. These are pretty much everywhere. Everywhere. And my whole life, I saw people pick these up and think that weren't that precious. And then you meet somebody from another country who's lived through persecution of a biblical kind. And they make you shut your mouth and thinking you know anything about who this creator is. That he would let his people suffer like this makes us write books like On Suffering. Why don't we suffer? Now we are. Now we have churches closing their doors all over this country, all over the world. And we think we're experiencing suffering because they're not letting us go to the store. because they're not letting us go do the things we used to do. I can't even go and watch my TV shows where I used to in the big screen TV place where everybody ate popcorn and drank and had a good time. I'm suffering terribly. Help us. No, but it's real. Like, I thought this. I was like, man, I haven't been to a movie in a long time. It's kind of hard. It's real, right? We've been brainwashed to believe these things were good and helpful and beneficial in our life. Meanwhile, we can't sit in a room with a stranger for 3 hours generally and look them in the eyes. We created a room. You guys ever notice when you go into every restaurant, every place you ever go to has music playing in the background? What is that about, right? Because they know you guys don't know what to do with silence. You'd actually talk to each other. Crazy. There was this time where we didn't have piped-in speakers in every convenience store. There was a time when people looked each other in the eye and they regarded each other as valuable and precious, as an image bearer of the Father. There was a time when they were the most valuable person in the room simply by proximity. Just because they happened to be next to you, they deserved your attention. Remember waiting rooms? You used to like sit and talk with people occasionally. We used to call it like elevator chatter, right? You're like, you got 30 seconds in an elevator. Can you even talk to them? I couldn't. I literally had a class where a guy sat down and was like, you need to learn how to give me your spiel on your book. He was trying to coach me on how to promote myself better. You need to be able to give somebody an elevator pitch, a 3-minute pitch, and a 3-hour pitch. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. So this is my attempt at I just gave him the back of my book. He thought that was terrible. I don't promote myself well because I think it's a bad word to do that to other people about yourself. I think the only one that's worth promoting is the one who authorized this book. This one. This is the only one that's worth promoting in my life. Like, the last words of my book are, let my name be forgotten, but may his be forever. This is my name. This is who I am. So in case any of you guys actually want to look me up and find me and hunt me down and kill me, here's my name. I did that. Because I believe that in this book, you can't. You can't kill anybody he puts his hand on. You can't. You're immortal. Did you guys not hear me? You're immortal. If you believe this book and his spirit is in you, you're immortal until he says otherwise. Pretty sure I read all of this a couple times now, and not one of the people that was really walking in his ways died suddenly. Do you understand what I'm saying? Not saying they didn't die, and sometimes terribly, but they knew. They had peace with their Father in heaven. They knew their time was drawing to its end, and they were going to rest. We have this phrase in our society that we engrave on the idols of gravestones that says, rest in peace. Who started that? Shabbat Shalom. Rest in peace. 6 days you labor, 7th day, sit down, relax, look each other in the face, talk to each other, eat a meal, enjoy each other. Rest in me. Out of your day of rest, I will bless you more than you could ever accomplish with the rest. People are putting it on their stones because they labored constantly in this rat race for that American dream, believing someday they'd get it. Someday I'll get to retire and move to Florida and get a winter down there with golf cart driveways and roads that they build for the golf carts to drive on. I've seen that. It's a freaky thing. Tiny micro communities where they have roads for golf carts. Freaky, y'all. It's freaky. I'm just saying. I come from the land of mountains in Colorado where you ain't ever taking that golf cart anywhere. When you see that down here and you see the big, well-advertised sign for a brand new subdivision that's coming in, the Babcock Ranch with golf cart roads, suckers in a lot of people that labored their whole life to die. Death wins when you think that there's some kind of thing called retirement in the kingdom. I'm sorry. You guys have wisdom. By that time, you should have some wisdom and some oil to be pouring out on other people to help rekindle our lamps that may have gotten snuffed out too early. Like, we need people that are of all ages. We need 70-year-olds talking to the 6-year-olds and 20-year-olds talking to the 40-year-olds. We need an eclectic group of people called the body that work together, co-labor together so that we can build a house for people to dwell in out of the sword of his word. That we could build houses of refuge for his people, where the people that are immortal work together to protect those that are perishing. That we would fight for them. That we would lay down, give Nathan our lives for others. I'm here to give my life because I learned a lesson that the Father was merciful to teach me. He let me take life from other human beings. He let me steal their life away to see that that cannot stop death. It sounds so simple of a lesson until you have been so ensnared by the devil to do his desire that you think death is the answer. Every agricultural specialist in this country and in this world who wants to teach you how to feed people on a large scale is going to point you towards the kingdom of death to do it. He's going to point you towards petrochemicals and things that will kill everything that's bad, but allow your one good piece of fruit to make it. That's it. The whole entire industrial food model in the United States is kill everything except for what we say should make it. We'll even grow the death inside it, like cotton. BT cotton is what it's called. 96% of all cotton that's grown in the world is genetically engineered and grows inside of a capsule of glyphosate. It literally grows poison inside itself and surrounds itself in it so that the fibers of the plant are bearing forth death. Been to Texas, lived there for a good season. Drove by these huge fields of cotton, red dirt. Wow. How do you grow so much in red dirt? Just dirt. I'm not talking about soil. They're different. You don't want to see soil, just go in those forests. Dig around. That's soil. That's alive. Everything's living. Crazy bugs. Insane nightmares of vines, remember? Soil underneath them. Cotton field, not one vine. Not one bug. Not one spider web. Nothing. Go to your orange orchards. You won't see a spider anywhere. They're all dead. Everything that touches the orange tree dies down here because the orange tree is grown in neonicotinoids. They grow so much nicotine, they spray so much nicotine concentrates in the soil that it kills everything and the plant absorbs it and then puts it out into the leaves so that anything that bites those leaves or bites that fruit dies. But don't worry, if that orange falls to the ground and touches the ground, it's poison. You can never eat it. But if they pick it and sell it to you, it's fine. They do this with all of our crops, guys. I'm not picking on oranges for any other reason than proximity. Do you understand? Cotton is grown the same way all over the world because they were killing too many people too fast by the amount of glyphosate they had to spray on the crops. There was too many people in India dying, and it was getting press coverage in the United States, you see. And people were like, hey, we shouldn't kill all the Indians right now, right? We've already done that once. Shouldn't do it twice. It's terrible for PR. So let's genetically engineer the crop so that it grows death inside it. And then we'll sell it to everyone as clothing that we say we'll wear it. But that couldn't have any bad long-term effects, right? Anyone wonder what the biggest organ of your body is? Skin. And what's our body supposed to be according to this? A temple. Kadosh. Set apart. So what are you supposed to wear? My wife and I, our ministry, the whole approach to our life now, after this, is how do we do Bible things, Bible ways? That's it. So if our food is poison, our air is poison, our water is poisoned, our clothes are poisoned, what's the cure? It's here. I believe that because this is the only guaranteed truth I have in life anymore. That's the beginning of the story of this book that goes in. Things are going great for Chelsea and I. We met each other. We fell in love. We got married. We couldn't have children anymore because, horrible nightmares in my past and doctors are liars, Then the Father authorizes life into our wombs and we suddenly have to make a choice. Do we leave this kingdom of death and try to raise life outside of it? Only if he is who he says he is and will do everything he said he would do. Faith. I had faith that this was true, even if everybody I ever knew was a liar. Even if every other textbook I ever read had lies in it. Even if every other classroom test that I had to sign had lies in it. This was not a lie. I believed El Shaddai would be my provider, my protector. I believed that. And now, for years, we fled fear. I fled from death. But then over the last 2 years, since I started going to the soil, since I started turning to the creation, since I started marveling again at the creation, finding rocks, I found my Creator alive and in great abundance in the soil, but not in the dirt. Last year, he gave me this. This is linen. It comes from a plant called flax. Anybody ever hear of flax hearts, right? Flax seeds and all this stuff. This is like, flax. It makes clothes, too. And they're the best thing you can put on your stinking body. You know why I know that? Because he said so. Like, true story. He said all his priests, they got to wear this. every time they go to minister to him. They had a special garment, kadosh. It's called an ephod. It was a special thing you would put on, and it was made of linen, fine linen, shesh, linen, special, one of one, totally unique. No other garment like it. They take that plant, and they thresh it, and they pull out from it these fibers that are so soft, they only get softer the more you wear them, the more you wash them, they will get softer over time. They shed heat perfectly. They are 8 degrees Celsius cooler than the cotton that's killing you. Talk about Florida, how are you going to survive the jungle? I'm telling you right now, linen. It's real. I know it's kind of chuckly, but it's super true. You guys need to go in linen, right? And you're in a land that has plenty of linen in the thrift stores. I'm just saying, it's disregarded by the rest of the world. Nobody values it the way that his people should. I'm not just talking about that one. He's got other fibers in here like wool, cashmere, merino. He's got these natural fibers that were made to be a certain way, that were made to cover our temples. He had these things that were in his creation that were screaming for us to work with them. He wants his people to be taken care of, to be provided for. And when he gave me this last year, when I was pruning tomatoes in greenhouses in Florida and sweating and in so much pain and in so much agony, he brought linen into my life. And it was such a blessing because I suddenly wasn't so swelteringly hot all the time. And I wasn't in pain. And I didn't know why that was. Not for 6 months. Because for 6 months, I kept wearing cotton on the bottom of my legs and nylon and these other fibers. But then I met a woman over the summer when I became a shepherd of goats. Crazy story. I'll get there another time. She told me basically that she started wearing linen because she was enraged all the time. Amazing woman. Marvelous person. 4 children. One with a severe cerebral palsy. Twins also. Homestead life, goats, which will make everybody enraged. I'm just telling you. Shepherds in the room know what I'm talking about. They will make you realize why he calls Israel stiff-necked and stubborn, like a goat. Dang, they got hard necks. It's real. Like they just, all day long, they just tear like this at grass. Their necks are so strong. It's unbelievable. They just throw you around the room. I've been thrown into so much poop, guys, by goats. I'm still not there yet to talk about it. Goats. They give you cashmere, though, so it's okay. Cashmere, the best. During that time, she told me, I see you wear linen. And I was like, yeah, this shirt. And she's like, you ever tried to wear the whole outfit in linen? And I was like, yeah, but never outside where people can see me because you always look like, you're leisurely. And I was like the tactical guy. Before, I could not go out of the house without carrying a small arsenal because I still had this clinging to me. I still was a part of the kingdom of death. I thought I had to be ready to protect myself and my family at any given moment because, he's coming. Or a version of me that used to hunt people down and murder them, he's coming. And I thought I always had to be ready. So I carried a whole arsenal on my body all the time. And I could not ever rest. I didn't know what Shabbat Shalom really was because when I walked out the door, soldier up, son. But then one day, I went for a hike with my family in the forest. And I was like, today's the day. I'm going to wear linen pants. And I can't wear a tactical belt. Dang it. So I took a backpack full of all the same gear. And I went hiking with my family. And there was these beautiful waterfalls. And incredible water cascading down out of springs of the rocks. And I drank with my face on the rock from springs of living water. And I felt gladness in my body. As soon as I stepped outside, I felt breezes because linen breathes. It's a natural fiber. It will breathe like your body was designed to breathe. And it cooled me down and I was laughing. I was laughing. I was rejoicing. And I suddenly was like, what does a garment of praise really mean? Like he says he's going to clothe his people with garments of praise. What is that? Like, I believe it's his real stuff. Like there's a real thing behind that verse. It's not just some kind of poetry that some dude said some time ago. Like these were human beings that had come into an encounter with their creator that changed them. King David was one of 8 brothers. Why was he King David? Where's the other brothers? Doubting King David, remember? Mocking him, horrifically belittling him right when he's there to fight Goliath. His brothers are there to accuse him. Anybody have any family members that are very quick to accuse you when you suddenly are regarding his word as precious and valuable and willing to change your whole life to go after it? Anybody else feel the persecution of other people that remind you of who you were? There's some people that are deeply ensnared in the kingdom of death that want to keep you there with them, because if you go away, you will be a perpetual reminder to them that he is true and their life is not the way it's supposed to be. And they don't like that. But King David becomes transformed and he writes the Psalms. Like the guy who writes the Psalms talks about garments of praise. What are garments of praise? Anybody remember when King David was dancing with all his might? What's he dancing in? You're dang right he lost his linen shorts. That guy was in a linen ephod. It says it. He was in garments of praise, and they were legitimately linen. It's crazy. I started a whole thing called Becoming a Linenite. It's biblical. Check it out. He was dancing with all his might. Do you know what that means? Like, don't forget, King David picked up a sword from a giant and cut his own head off with it. That's all his might. One day. Do you think that guy could dance? Like, come on. All his might dancing. All his might dancing. Dude who fights Goliath dancing. Dancing. Come on, you guys don't think like this because we don't look at the Bible like it's a true history book. Like, this is the history of the world. Everything else that they told us is probably a lie. Like, for real. They're like, it's 438 million years old dinosaur bone. No, it's not. I found it. Personally. I also find fossils that look exactly the same as the seashells I find today. I've seen the animal is still alive in it. And then I'll go and dig out of the limestone the exact same fossil of the same creature. And they're like, yeah, distant relative. Can't. Millions of years ago, this thing happened. Asteroid came down. Dust everywhere. Bad day to be a dinosaur. Good day to be a fish. Don't worry, we came from that fish. You're welcome, fish. You're like, what are you talking about? You guys are crazy. We're not allowed to say that. I'm sorry. The textbook says you're supposed to answer, yes, this fossil is 438 million years old. We're making them believe lies instead of dancing with all our might. He wants us to dance with all our might, to rejoice as a child. Because if you want to enter into his kingdom, you got to be like a child who dances with all their might at the tiny little treasures they find. They marvel and they rejoice and they celebrate and say, Daddy, look at what I found. So excited. Yes. And you're like, it's a brown rock. We've got so many rocks. I was the kid with rock boxes when you moved. You know, you guys, some of your parents are like, you always got one rock kid in the family, right? Everybody's, people over here like, I know that was awesome. See, they're pointing each other out over here. They know exactly what I'm talking about, right? But there's always one in the family. Why? Because that's a gift. Because some of us have this deep innate desire to regard something unique and particular and tiny aspect of creation. And we were made to do that. That was our one of two fruit we were supposed to bear that day. That was it. Your children, our children, should be going out into creation and bringing us the treasures of the earth that we need to stop in the middle of our day and turn to them and remember the Creator's gladness. He loves us so much, he created rocks. Like rocks. You guys are sitting on rocks. Just very alchemical, crazy versions of them. But it's all still rocks, right? I drove by mining facilities for miles. You guys mine crazy amounts of stuff out of this state. You just draw it up. Predominantly limestone, phosphorus. You use that to grow all the death plants everywhere around the world. This is where it comes from. Thanks, Florida. You guys are doing your job, right? Somebody is. Somebody is. But your children will go and mine the greatest treasures of the earth. We are supposed to be his children that go and mine the earth for the greatest treasures. All right, I'm going to break out the sword for a second. You guys ever read along in the scriptures occasionally? You read something you've read lots and lots and lots of times? I've looked up every verse on treasure in the Bible numerous times. But you know what's interesting? Is the Father can blind you. Angels can blind you. You guys ever read about Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot, the angels? They blinded the dudes at the door. Apparently, angels have some kind of ability to blind you. Just blind you outright. This one blinded the whole earth to what is food. Blinded the whole earth to what is clothing. Blinded the whole earth to what is family. What is fathers. What is mothers, sisters, brothers, friends? What's a neighbor? We've been blinded, taken captive. But he will give us his treasures when we look to him. When we turn to him, he will turn to us. And he will open up his treasure chest. And that's what this word is. It's an endless treasure chest. The more you dig into it and pull out the gold, and you scream to all your friends and your family, I found gold! I come from Colorado, where there were literally cities built in the mountains on 11, 12,000 feet in the air. Overnight, tens of thousands of people would show up. Tens of thousands of people, because somebody proclaimed, I found something treasure and valuable up here. Come and see. Mountains are literally moved by people when they hear that there's treasure in those hills, right? Mountains are moved when men and women or children value something enough to sell themselves out for it. Go west, there's gold out there. The whole thing called the gold rush and all that. It's a real thing. I've walked through the ruins of these communities where thousands of human beings sacrificed everything they have to come and look for dirt. Dirt. It's a way more precious thing than to look for a mirror. All of our people, all of our friends, all of our family are being locked into prisons voluntarily, submitting to a system if at least they can have their internet and their mirrors. Wow. That's radical, intelligent evil. But he has his treasures that are waiting. Thus says Yahweh, in a favorable time I shall answer you, and in the day of deliverance I shall help you, and I guard you and give you for a covenant of the people to restore the earth, to cause them to inherit the ruined inheritances, to say to the prisoners, go out. To those who are in darkness, show yourselves. Let them feed on the ways, and let their pasture be on the bare hills. They shall not hunger nor thirst, neither heat nor sun shall strike them. For he who has compassion on them shall lead them, even by fountains of waters to guide them. And I shall make all my mountains a way, and my mountains raised up. We are supposed to go to the prisoners and preach to them the good news. We are supposed to go set captives free. We are supposed to go, jump out of the environment that we have been raised in, to get out of that system of evil that we have been growing up with, and to trust that he can set us free from every snare of the devil, every trap that's laid along the way. Because when David wrote the Psalms, there was still the dragon stalking him. He was still nipping at his heels. Do you remember the verses Yeshua quotes on the cross? They're from David's mouth. He's saying the same things that those people that he ate bread with are betraying him. David said this stuff. Dancing with all his might, David. Talking about the people that are plotting to kill him. That are talking about the conspiracies that are taking place. Talking about an entire room of people that are there to kill him. Saul, every day of Saul's life, he only thought of ways he could kill David. From the day he threw the spear at David, it said every day until the day he killed himself with it, he thought of ways to murder David. And yet, David was immortal until the Father said otherwise. If we would regard this as the most precious thing in the room, he would give us new lenses so we could see things that nobody else can see. Do you know why I found that dinosaur bone and nobody else did? Because I took this to the ocean. How do you guys go to the ocean and not bring this? Crazy to me. You know why? Because you've been beguiled by the devil. Yeah, I'm going to do it. You won't even get in the water. I've been to the beach, y'all. Lots. Literally hundreds and hundreds of times. It's full time. I work and slave away like an animal in the field so that I can go to the beach once a week. I am getting to the water. And you know what I bring? Every time this. And you know how many people bring this with them? Maybe one. I'll see hundreds of people every time. Maybe two, one at the most. And do you know who I see in the water? The children. Why are the kids in the water? Pool party, parents all sitting on the side. Yep. What are you guys up to? All the parents on the sideline. Kids in the pool. Parents are like, don't splash me! Stop it, my hair! Vanity. No, I'm super serious. Vanity, predominant reason. And you avoid being uncomfortable. Remember being wired backwards? I wanted to be in the climate-controlled environment, and jumping in a pool or jumping in an ocean or jumping in a spring or jumping in the snow is definitely not a climate-controlled environment. But the Father created that climate to save your soul. To save your soul, your mind, your will, and your emotions. To give your body healing. It will revitalize your skin. Go jump in the water when it's chilly, little chilly, really cold, even better. It will literally revitalize your hair. You've got these follicles that grow, all your hair grows out of. It'll close those up super tight, and it'll allow the oils, the natural oils that are in your hair, to evenly coat your hair. And then when you brush it, you're going to get this sheen on it. That's just hair. You talk about your skin. It washes your skin. When you plunge in the water and you jump in that cold water, it plunges out and cleanses your pores. And then your pores are able to constrict and close up so dirt and grime don't get in them. But when you take a hot shower, it dries your skin out, and it leaves you feeling aged. It shows wrinkles and all these other things that people find blemishes. It dries you out. You're made to take cold showers. Super unpopular message. I talk on a lot of things that make people uncomfortable. Like, go get in cold water and wear your linen while you do it. Oh, I'm so serious. Wear your linen to the ocean and jump in and watch what happens. You will shout with gladness when you get out. I've watched it. I'm not kidding. I've done this all over the world, people. I send linen garments. We called it the LinenRailroad. We go to thrift stores. We plunder them of all their treasures. And then we mail them to the people all over the world for free. And so they can go jump in those springs of living water with their linen on. And it heals their bodies legitimately. And this girl right here, she regarded what I had to say last time I was here. She wearing linen. Guess who feels better? Guess who came to me with a testimony about her fibromyalgia and her pain being relieved? That one. I didn't do that. His did. He knows his people need things. He promises if you follow him, he'll feed you, he'll clothe you, he'll water you, he'll nourish you and protect you and provide for you because he's the patron. He's the root. He is the Father who feeds and nourishes his people if you follow him, which makes you a peculiar person. So when I'm the dude in the water shouting about the treasures, when I'm like, woo! You know what happens? All these people on the beach are like, dude found something. Dude found something. Garments of gladness coming at you, son. Last time I was here, I wore this giant Megalodon tooth. Huge shark tooth I found from a 35-foot shark. For years I prayed to find a Megalodon tooth and never found one. Not one. Not even like a little tiny, tiny piece of one. Never. Years I've looked. When I found that, it was misty and rainy and freezing cold. And no, I did not want to go in the water, even with my sweet goggles and linen and being all like, champion. It was nasty out there. But you know what happened? I dove down, and on the first dive, I could only see 6 inches, and I saw it sitting there. Placed for me by my Father in heaven. My first father gave me death. My heavenly Father gave me life, and he gave me stones of testimony, which is what you all are supposed to be, so that you would proclaim his praises to the nations, that you would be the perpetual light, so that when you scream, I found treasure, everybody looks and wants to come after you. And you know what happened? People get in the water. All these tourists, they travel from all over the country. I meet a lot of people from Illinois. I don't know why, but on the beach, there's a lot of people from Chicago that are like, oh, it's so good to see the sun. And they're all just beet red and sunburned. They're like white with sunscreen, and they're just sweaty on the beach, and they're like, it's great being here. And their kids are like, Dad, where's all the shark teeth? And he's like, I don't know, the sign had a really cool one on it. We only got 3 days on this vacation, and we got to find shark teeth, and none of them are in the water. They're all walking along the shore looking for shark teeth. And I'm like, you got to get in the water. And they're like, yeah, but it's cold. And I'm like, you're from Chicago. You talking about cold water? And they're like, yeah, the water's always cold. Every adult is scared of water. Just like you're all scared of the jungle. You're from Florida. How are you not jungle humans? You guys should be the people who build huts out there. I know, you're all shaking your heads like, no, you got to be able to build trees out there. I'm telling you, you're going to make tree houses for your family to live in and have chickens and goats underneath. It's going to be amazing. This place is about to transform itself. Be a bunch of Linenites out there in jungle houses. When I come out of the water and I show them my treasures, like this one. This is a super tiny one. But this is from a tiger shark. Fossil, remember? Millions of years old. Same tooth as the sharks that are swimming today. But this one's made of stone now. Yeah, you ever hear about Noah? The Nephilim? Big story. Check out the Bible. It'll tell you all about it. When I show them this, do you want to know what happens? Their kids go, Dad, get in the water. Come on. Get in the water, Dad. Get us. And he's like, yeah, I could do that. And then I give him a tool. It's called a sifter. They call them the Florida snow shovel down here. It's great marketing. It's hilarious, right? It's basically a rake that goes in the water and sifts out sand and leaves seashells and stuff behind. And so you'll see people at the beach sometimes, and you're like, that guy's out there just shaking a sifter. He's finding the treasures. And so I gave their dad my sifter. And you know what happened? That guy spent the whole day in the water. Hours and hours and hours in the water. Because he would go in the ocean. I taught him how to scoop up at the wreck line, this special little place where the best treasures are hidden in the ocean. And he would sit there and sift and shake it and shake it and shake it and shake it and shake it. And then he'd run up on the shore and dump it out on the sand. And then his children would sift through it and be like, yes, Sifting, fossil. And then the dad's like, yeah, gonna go back in. And he just did this for hours and hours and hours and hours. And you know what happened when I was packing up, ready to leave? That dad came over to me soaking wet, burned by the sun like I can't even describe to you guys that poor man's face. And he was radiant. He was overjoyed. And his family was life embodied. Because one person screamed treasure in the water, and then they came over to find out what the big hoopla was all about. And they were willing to sacrifice their gods of convenience, tear down the idols of discomfort, and get in the water and reveal the treasures that their Creator had for them. This is what's waiting for you guys. If you would step outside of the convenient box in prison cell we've been brainwashed to believe was good and go into the kingdom of life. I tell people, live dangerously. Every time they say, be safe, I'm like, that's like a command for a dog. It's literally the same thing. Sit. Do I get a treat? Yes, you get your Netflix and you get your Amazon Prime. What else do I got to do to keep that coming? What else are we willing to compromise to keep these treats coming? What else are we willing to compromise to keep our conveniences? What are you willing to sacrifice to get the kingdom? Sell everything you have. Come and follow me. Give everything you have to the poor. And then you will store up treasure in heaven and you'll be perfect. Some went away, dejected, grieved, because they were people of great possessions. What possesses you? Where are the idols in your life? Where is it that He wants you to be? Until you value this as the most precious thing in the earth, you will always be being sifted by the sift of vanity. And that fruit that you are made to bear will instead be being stolen and kept by this dragon. The Father has His good fruits for each and every one of you. I hope you will go and find them and do whatever it takes to chase His kingdom and put on garments of gladness and rejoice for the good treasures you found in Him. Thank you, guys.